It's no secret that I believe that Lord of the Rings Online is one of the greatest MMORPGs of all time, but I can't lie to you, I've been a little bit bored with the game lately. Well, thankfully, that is all about to change with the most recent revelations about the upcoming Lord of the Rings Online updates. And I think that they are truly going to be game-changing, and it's one of the best updates that we've had in years. What is happening, everybody? My name is BrightLife. This is my fancy shirt. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. BrightLife, where have you been? Well, I've been doing these wonderful things, but enough about me, more about what we're talking about today, which is why I am more excited about the future of Lord of the Rings Online today than I have been in months, so let's jump into it. Hey, as we get this video started, please hit that like button if you don't mind. It lets me be seen by more LOTRO and MMO lovers out there, and I think more people need to hear about this incredible update because on a recent Court of the Rings, which is where the producers get together and talk about the future of the game, they came out with some really incredible update details for us. And there are 4 specific areas that I want to touch on based on what they were talking about, but I'm really pumped. We're going to go in descending order. So the things that I'm excited about to the things that I am most excited about at the end. The first thing that I'm excited about, and I think everybody's probably a little excited about, is the update on lag fixes. Now, if you've played this game at all in the past couple years, you'll know that there is lag. It's one of the biggest community complaints. It just kind of is what it is. Now, for me, sometimes the complaints feel a little bit overblown. If this is an older MMO, this is just kind of how it goes when you choose to play an older MMO. But at the end of the day, lag is frustrating, and especially for people in the EU, it can be really tough because the servers are all located here in the US. Well, they have identified some interesting little technical things in the background, especially concerning player buffs and debuffs, some of the more delving system issues, and they're starting to really fix those, which is great. I don't think lag will ever fully go away in LOTRO, but that is exciting to hear that in the upcoming updates, they are going to be releasing massive overhauls to lag, and they've already actually started to roll those things out as well. So good on you, Standing Stone Games. Again, exciting, not the thing that I'm most excited about, but still, it's there. All right, now let's get into the 3 that I am personally the most stoked on. Okay, the first one is the unveiling of the fact that there is going to be a new race in the Lord of the Rings Online. Kind of like the Stout Axe, they're still going to be in the 4 main race families, but this is going to be the River Hobbits, or the River Folk if you like the lore. Now, this is obviously exciting. The concept art that they have released for this looks really interesting. I think that these character models look great. I love the housing item additions to this thing. I'm really digging the outfits that we see in the bottom right here. Now, the store, or River Folk, or River Hobbits, whatever you'd like to call them, were heavier and broader in build than most other hobbits, and they had large hands and feet like normal. Now, among the hobbits, the stores most resembled men and were most friendly to them, and they were the only hobbits that normally grew facial hair. Now, this is something that I hope, as we see some of the concept art, maybe we see change a little bit as we get closer to the release of the new River Hobbit race. It would be cool to see them actually be able to grow facial hair. I don't really see any quite yet on this concept art, but again, this is an evolving concept. I do hope that if they're going to stay true to the lore, that we start to see the River Folk maybe have a little bit more of a bearded look. I think that would be really cool. And so that really has to do with their physical characteristics. As far as who they were amongst the hobbits, they were, of course, river hobbits. They actually enjoyed boats, they enjoyed swimming, which notoriously hobbits do not, which of course is why Samwise Gamgee almost meets his watery demise at the end of Fellowship of the Ring. But at the end of the day, they love the water, and so it's going to be cool to see how they interact with the other hobbits of this game as they release this new race. Now, of course, the most famous of River Hobbits comes to us in 2430 of the Third Age, when the remaining River Hobbits, or stores, or whatever they were at that point in the Vales of Anduin, were living. There was ruled by a matriarch. She had outlived her husband, and along came Smeagol and Deagol. Of course, eventually Smeagol takes the ring. It begins corrupting him. He kind of becomes the villain of the family, and eventually is outcasted by the matriarchal grandmother in this village. Now, by the time of the War of the Ring, the store folk had largely deserted this land. They didn't really exist where they were before when Smeagol was there. And what Tolkien would have said is what became of the stores, and if they ever rejoined their folk in Eriador, no history tells. Now, what's going to be really interesting as a fan of how LOTRO typically tends to tell its stories, how they honor Tolkien's work, is how they're going to reintroduce the River Folk hobbits back into the storyline. I'm actually interested to see where this goes. Maybe we get a little bit of a telling of Smeagol and Deagol and what happened. I love how LOTRO tells stories, so for me, that's the thing that I'm most excited about. Another race is exciting, it's awesome, but I think being able to see how they reintroduce them and how they tell their story is going to be a really, really cool addition to the game and will be another reason to play this great game. All right, now the second thing that I am really second most excited about in this whole announcement that came out is the new upcoming class in the expansion called the Mariner. Now, initially we thought this was going to be a Corsair of Umbar kind of a thing because they mentioned Sea Breeze and all that stuff, and you know, we were typically kind of on the money with this one, but of course they can't be Corsairs because Corsairs are the bad guys. So of course for the lore, we're going to have those called the Mariner. Now the Mariner is supposed to be a DPS focused class, and how they're actually going to play is largely unknown, but I kind of have two possibilities for you, just two little theories to throw at you. Again, I'm excited to see what they do. You tell me which one you think is most likely. I'll tell you which one I think is most likely. The first one, of course, is the pirate-like swashbuckling class. These would be maybe Corsairs of Umbar turned good, but mechanic guesses, I would assume that this would be very roguelike, maybe a rapier class with poison and bleeds. The problem is we already have the burglar that does tend to do those things, so how it would differentiate, I'm not really sure. If this was a condition class, maybe with small crossbows kind of falling into that Umbar type space, I can see some really cool things being done there. I also do think, of course, of the gambling type rogues in World of Warcraft where you roll dice that tend to, you know, RNG base your class. I think that could be really interesting as well. I think that's the most likely option, but it's not the one I'm most excited about, even though it's probably the most likely. The other one we talked about in chat yesterday, shout out to AG Stinger, themed off of Eärendil. Eärendil, the father of Elrond, was, of course, has a Silmaril on his brow and sails the night sky in a ship. That's where the Valar put him. And what I think would be really cool is if we're talking about a mariner, just like Eärendil, it was a mariner, is a mariner of the skies, slayed the great dragons in the first and second age. In this case, we'd likely see a lot more of a mage-like class that drew on the power of the Star of Eärendil. I think that would actually be really, really cool. The idea of being ship-bound but also being magic-influenced would be really rad. Again, I think this is very, very unlikely. It's actually very, honestly, super unlikely, but I think it's a cool idea, and so I thought I'd share it with you guys as well. What do you guys think? What is this class going to look like? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. But the best update of all of these updates, the thing that is making me most excited, it's the reason that I think this is the best upcoming update in years of Lord of the Rings Online, is the Stat Squish. Now this did kind of get lost in the shuffle of the Court of the Rings thing. I know it was a headline, but you know, there were a lot of other things they were talking about, but to me, as someone who really values the growth of this game, this is the #1 most important thing that they talked about. This was one that I've been pushing for a long time, but really the idea is that they're going to take these health pools that players now have at 140 of, you know, 2 million health and all that stuff, and squish them down to where they said that no class would ever exceed 1 million health at all. Now, of course, the reason that this is awesome is because stat squishes tend to breathe new life into MMOs, because when an MMO gets bloated, when you get a couple extra 1,000 health, it doesn't really feel very significant. For example, if you had 4 donuts and you got 1 more, that feels significant. But if you have 10,000 donuts and you get 5 or 10 more donuts, it doesn't really feel as significant. Plus, you're probably going to get severe diabetes. But really, when you have less and you get a little bit, that feels significant. It feels like progression. The place where Lord of the Rings Online is right now is when you get a new level, or you get a new weapon, or you get a new stat boosting piece of armor, it doesn't really feel that significant because you know you still have millions of health to go until you're at the point where you're really topped out. What's really cool is that they're making this happen. This is exactly what happened with World of Warcraft when they switched from Shadowlands to Dragonflight. It was the best change that they made. I personally loved it, and I'm excited for this. Now, what I do hope is that they go a little bit further with this. I know that they're testing things out. I'm hoping that players can't exceed maybe the 30 to 50,000 hit point health pool. I think that that's a great number because it gives you a long way to grow, but I think anything over that, even once you hit like the 100K, 500K, 700K, those numbers, again, they just feel kind of muddy. So that's just a personal opinion. I'd love to hear yours in the comments below, but I really hope that they take it down to like that 30 to 50,000 health range, and that everything else really falls in line with that as well. Now, I want to just say this really quickly and give praise to the devs here. This is awesome. This is an older MMO, and older MMOs typically don't change that much. But I think with the resurgence and popularity of MMOs, especially recently with a lot of new ones getting announced, this is exciting to see that more work is being put put into this one. I've been predicting this for a while, that Standing Stone Games' parent company, EG7, is going to be leaning a lot of financial help into the Lord of the Rings Online, really trying to revamp it, and it seems like that's what's really starting to happen. Now, again, I want to praise the devs for this, and I also encourage them. They did mention a level squish in this as well. They said they're not quite sure on that yet. They're doing some testing and thoughts. If I was going to have the perfect update, it would include a level squish. I think that being able to level squish down the max of 140 down to 70, and then just adding 5 levels each expansion would be the best way to go at this point. And I think the big reason for that, in my opinion, is really not necessarily for the existing player, but for the newer player. I know a lot of folks in my Discord, as we've talked about them, they've said, listen, the reason we don't want to get into LOTRO is because it's just such a crazy long amount of game to play before I can actually experience what I love experiencing, which is the end game. LOTRO is great for the beginning and mid-game loving player, but the end game loving player, it's going to take a long time to get there, and that's just not really helpful. You need to be able to appeal to all 3 crowds, and so I do hope that they take the feedback of their players even further, and if they can maybe even just cut the levels right in half, I think that would be an excellent addition to the game. And if it was me, cut it all the way down to like 50, and then let the next expansion be where you go to 60. Again, just a personal opinion, but hey, I'm really excited. I've been away from LOTRO for a little bit just because I haven't been super excited about it, and I don't want to make videos and content around what I'm not excited about, but I'm really finally now more excited than I've been in a while for Lord of the Rings Online. But I want to hear from you. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below what you think about these updates. Again, LOTRO will always be my home MMO. I like playing all sorts of different ones, but it is my favorite game for sure. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But friends, as always, I want to say thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of this video. If you liked the video, please like. If you loved it, hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel out. But as always, friends, the last 2 things that I say at the end of all my videos are the most important thing that I could say at any video ever, and it's this. It's that you're more loved than you know, and you are so much more valuable than you realize. I hope you have an incredible day, and I will see you in the next one. Oh, and really quickly, friends, if you do want a longer explanation about kind of the break that I've been taking with things, there is going to be an unlisted video that is in the description down below. I don't want to blow up people's sub boxes with things they don't care about, but if you care about that stuff, you can hit that link in the video description down below. It's going to be unlisted, so you'll be able to see it. Anyway, love you guys. See you guys in the next one.